If the new year feels like a fresh start for you, I want you to hear this first. You don't have to have everything figured out yet. You don't need a perfect plan, a polished brand, or a crystal clear direction. This episode is for you if you're starting a business for the very first time, or if you've been building for a while and you're ready for a fresh, grounded start. The beginning of a new year can bring a lot of pressure. Pressure to know your goals, pressure to feel confident, pressure to finally get it right. But whether you're brand new or rebuilding after a hard season, you don't need to push harder or overhaul everything. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is go back to the basics and rebuild from a place that actually makes sense for you. Today is about creating a clean starting point, one that feels steady, supportive, and doable, not overwhelming. Hey friend, and welcome back to Sparkle and Shine. I'm Cassandra, your creative biz bestie, and I'm really glad you're here today. This podcast is a space for creative women who want to build businesses with intention, confidence, and heart, without burning themselves out in the process. I use my own business, Pretty Pineapple Bead, as my teaching ground here. Not because I have everything figured out, but because the most helpful lessons come from real life experience. If you're listening on January 1st or sometime later when you needed this, just know this episode is meant to meet you exactly where you are. And before we talk about building anything new, I want to slow us down for a second, because every fresh start is shaped by what came before it, whether we acknowledge it or not. So instead of jumping straight into goals or strategies, let's start by grounding ourselves in reality. What did your business actually feel like when this last year began? At the start of 2025, my business looked fine on paper. I had an active website. I had inventory ready to sell. I had plans and ideas and big hopes for the year ahead. But internally, it felt very different. I was juggling a part-time job, my business, and a lot of personal life stress. My confidence was low, my mental load was heavy, and even though I wanted growth, I was mostly just trying to stay afloat. Very early in the year, a boutique that carried my jewelry decided to stop carrying my pieces. And while it wasn't a devastating business loss, emotionally, it hit hard. It shook my confidence at a moment where I already felt fragile. Instead of feeling grounded going into the year, I felt myself shrink. That was the moment where things started to feel off, even if I couldn't fully name it yet. Looking back, I can see that I was trying to push through uncertainty instead of slowing down to reassess. I was focused on selling, surviving, and making things work, without a solid framework underneath it all. And if you've ever been there, you know how exhausting that feels. Sometimes going back to basics isn't about starting over. It's about finally building the foundation you didn't have the capacity to build before. Because when things feel shaky like that, it doesn't just affect your plans. It affects how connected you feel to the work itself. And that's where things started to shift for me, not just in how I was running my business, but in how creating felt on a deeper level. Because when you're operating in survival mode long enough, even the things you love can start to feel really heavy. When I first started making jewelry, it gave me something really important. It gave me a sense of calmness. It gave me a way to escape. It gave me a way to slow down and create something meaningful with my hands. Sorting through beads, playing with color, bringing ideas to life. That process grounded me. And over time, it became about more than just creating things for myself. It became about helping other women feel confident, expressive, and joyful through color. But somewhere along the way, that feeling started to fade. For me, the biggest shift happened when my inventory grew, and grew, and grew some more. My jewelry lives in my living room, which is also my main office and bead studio space. Seeing pegboards full every single day stopped feeling inspiring, and it started feeling suffocating. It felt like creating more didn't make sense when so much wasn't moving. Instead of feeling excited to make new things, I felt blocked and overwhelmed, like creating more only added to the weight I was already carrying. And eventually, I stopped creating altogether. Not because I didn't love it, not because I ran out of ideas, but because the pressure drowned out the joy. What I know now is this: when your why gets buried under stress, survival, or expectations, it doesn't disappear. It waits. And reconnecting with it doesn't require a dramatic moment. Sometimes it starts quietly with one idea, one spark, one reminder of why you began. And when that connection to your work starts to blur, something else often follows. You start second guessing who you're really creating for. Not because you forgot your audience, but because when you're overwhelmed, your clarity gets fuzzy. One of the fastest ways to lose clarity in business is trying to speak to everyone. When I look back at the moments that felt most aligned in 2025, they all had one thing in common. That's connection. There was a DIY bead bar party with 3 generations of women creating together. I was watching laughter, confidence, and creativity unfold in real time. There was a customer who dreamed about my jewelry and trusted me to help bring her vision to life. That excitement, that collaboration, that energy, those moments reminded me exactly who I create for. It's not everyone. It's not for the algorithm, not vague audiences, but real people who value color, creativity, confidence, and community. When your message feels flat or hard to share, it's often because you've drifted away from your people, not because you're doing something wrong. Clarity doesn't come from being louder. It comes from being more specific. And here's the thing. Knowing who you're creating for is powerful, but it still has to fit inside your real life, because a business can be aligned on paper and still feel impossible to keep up with day to day. And for me, that disconnect showed up most clearly in how I was trying to structure my days. For a long time, I thought a productive day meant checking everything off my list. Perfect content plans, consistent posting, no gaps, no pauses. But real life rarely matched that vision. I would overplan. Life would happen. And instead of adjusting, I'd abandon the plan altogether. That cycle created more shame than progress, and shame never built the business I wanted. What finally started to shift things for me was allowing structure to be lighter. Frameworks instead of rigid plans. Consistency without perfection. Honoring my needs and giving myself grace. Letting things flow instead of forcing them. That approach doesn't make me less committed. It makes my business more sustainable. A business that fits your life will always outperform one that's constantly working against it. That realization led me to something I resisted for a long time. The idea that simpler doesn't mean smaller, it means sustainable. One of the biggest mindset shifts I've made is letting go of the idea that I have to do everything all the time. I don't need to post every single day to matter. I don't need to be everywhere to be visible. I don't need a perfect system to make progress. Simplicity isn't doing less because you're lazy. It's doing less on purpose. When your plan supports your energy instead of draining it, you show up more consistently, even when life gets busy. And that consistency builds trust with yourself and with your audience. And when you look at all of this together, the season you're coming from, the reason you started, the people you're creating for, and the life you're actually living, the path forward doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be honest. If you're starting this year feeling unsure, overwhelmed, or quietly hopeful, you're not doing it wrong. You don't need perfection. You don't need pressure. You don't need to rush. You're allowed to begin gently. You're allowed to build slowly. And you're allowed to create something that actually supports you. Wherever you're starting from today, it's enough. Until next time, keep showing up with heart, keep trusting yourself, and keep shining.